Everyone, thank you, Veronica. We are just starting in a couple of minutes. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are about to start. So hello, everyone, and welcome. I think we can start today's webinar on time. Thank you for being here and welcome everyone. I'm Valeria Fantini and I work in ALDA, European Association for Local Democracy, where I work as project manager and coordinator of the hub Environment and Climate. We are very delighted to have you all here, to see that you are many and interested in today's topic, which is very relevant. Today's ALDA Talk is the first of a series of talks, so of a series of webinars that we are organizing on the green reconstruction of Ukraine. And today specifically, the main topic will be the Green Recovery Plan for Ukraine reconstruction. For those of you who don't know, ALDA stands for European Association for Local Democracy. We are an NGO and a membership-based organization with more than 300 members. We are a key stakeholder in the field of active citizenship and local democracy. And we support citizens and group of citizens with participatory processes and actions. As I was saying before, we have various hubs, thematic hubs in ALDA, and I coordinate the one related to environment and climate. And why is it important to connect these also?
Важливо це пов'язувати також з тим, що відбувається тепер в Україні, тому що, звичайно, з часів вторгнення Росії в Україну АЛДА дуже багато працює, щоб підтримувати і українців.
Recognize that first and foremost, this is a humanitarian crisis, but we wanted also to see the perspective of what is happening from an environmental point of view, since it is also, we recognize that it is also an environmental crisis. So for this reason, today I'm alongside with my colleagues, Cristina Kvarziana, who is ALDA's representative in Ukraine, and Veronica Vidotto, who is our membership officer. We organized this talk, again, the first of this series, to again discuss and raise awareness and talk together about this with also our distinguished speakers that Cristina will present to us. Just a couple of housekeeping rules for today. This event will be held both in English and Ukrainian. Our last speech will be in Ukrainian, and there is a translation available. If you want, there is a button down in your Zoom window for translation, called live translation. You can see a little word. And in that sense, you can choose to hear either the English translation or the Ukrainian translation. So please feel free to do so. Another thing is that we hope that this event will be participated. I mean, we know it's a webinar, but we still hope to really hear your voice and to listen to your questions, especially after these very interesting sessions of our speakers. And there is a specific question and answer button also below on your Zoom. So please feel free to use it. I mean, there will be a dedicated session, but feel free to write your questions there or in the chat, but specifically there as Cristina, then we will check them and we will raise them to our speakers. So thank you all again for being here. It's a great pleasure, and we also can anticipate that the next webinar of this series will be held on the 29th of January, and we will talk about ecological demining. So thank you again for being here, and I pass the mic to my colleague Cristina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valeriya, and good afternoon to everyone. It is our pleasure to have all of you today, so many participants, so many distinguished indeed speakers. Thank you for giving us your time in this Monday afternoon. I hope it's going to be a good start of the week. Also to get us into the topic of the discussion and to set a little bit the frame of what we're going to discuss today, I would like to start with a few numbers, which are, according to the World Bank estimates, 1.4 billion residential buildings were destroyed in Ukraine. 10% of all schools and 16% of the medical facilities were damaged or destroyed in Ukraine. And for us as an association that primarily deals with local authorities, it's like huge numbers, because we know that these are going to be the local authorities who will have to rebuild this destroyed infrastructure in Ukraine. But the question we're trying to approach today is how the Ukrainian local authorities will draft their recovery plans, how the major funding program for Ukraine recovery, being Ukraine Facility, is designed, and how the sustainability is incorporated in it, and broader, what is the role of sustainability and green principles in the whole Ukraine recovery discourse. To tackle these issues, we have three fantastic speakers today. Please let me introduce you Krzysztof Gierulski, Policy Officer at the Ukraine Service, DG NEAR at the European Commission. We have Valeriya Izhyk, EU Policy Officer, Ukraine Reconstruction, at CEE Bankwatch Network. And we have Liubov Ropalo, a regional advisor at Ukraine Early Recovery Project. Myself, I'm Krystyna Kwarcana, ALDA representative in Ukraine, and I'm joined here with my great colleagues, Weronika Widotto and Valeria Fantini, who will be facilitating this event together with me. So to begin with, we gathered here today for several reasons, and they all have to do with ALDA work in Ukraine. So as ALDA, European Association for Local Democracy, we're currently focusing on three key areas in our work in Ukraine. One is networking and international advocacy. We, since the full-scale invasion, increased significantly our membership base in Ukraine. We are currently having more than 20 members, being local authorities, regional authorities, but also associations of local authorities, also NGOs, universities, and of course, local democracy agencies. We focus on capacity building for civil society and local authorities. And the major pillar, I would say, currently in our work in Ukraine is the establishment of new local democracy agencies. Those of you who are not in this, let's say, conversation yet, the local democracy agencies is a special, let's say, status that ALDA, special status of organizations ALDA is working with. Those are independent entities hosted by local authorities in Ukraine, but created in cooperation with EU partners that also, once established, become ALDA members themselves. ALDA started this work after the war in Balkans with establishing LDAs. This is the abbreviation for local.
Такі агенції ми спочатку почали створювати на Балканах, а потім в східному сусідстві. Тепер у нас вже таких 16 організацій і агенцій, і ми плануємо ще більше відкрити в Україні. І 2 з таких місцевих агенцій демократії.
In Dnipropetrovsk region and another one in Kharkiv. We are trying to reinforce or open with the support of You Lead with Europe program that is also our donor for this event. So basically it's getting under the Bridges of Trust initiative. We are incorporating the partnerships that were created under Bridges of Trust into this broader multi-stakeholder partnerships for the local democracy agencies. Some of the partners I hope are present here today. From Ukrainian side, those are Zelenodolsk, Merefa, and Novomoskovsk. I saw they registered, so warm welcome to our new partners. And from EU side, there was Bilbao, Buscate in Italy, and in France. Under this project, we just completed a massive international conference on decentralized support to Ukrainian communities, which took place in Italy last month. Also, some of you I know joined us during this conference. Thank you very much for that. And I wanted to say that during the conference, we gathered many stakeholders and inaugurated Vicenza Declaration, which is the statement that ALDA will be further advocating in Brussels and also in Italy to excel on our support to Ukrainian communities. Both on the conference and further in our work with Ukrainian partners, the question of funding kept popping up. Mainly the fact that many local authorities found themselves a little, let's say, confused with the way the funding for recovery will be organized. But for us as a European association, we were also questioning how the sustainability principles will be enforced in this funding for Ukraine recovery. So to best organize and facilitate the process to answer this question, we did our best as a European association working with the local level, working with local democracy. We tried to bridge Brussels and very local level in Ukraine, what we're doing today on our panel. So we will try to sort of rise from the local communities in Ukraine, most of which listen to us today, with the help of distinguished experts that are sitting in the panel. So I will now pass the floor to Krzysztof Gierulski, the policy officer at Ukraine facility in the Director General for the enlargement negotiations, to help us understand how the sustainability principles are incorporated in Ukraine facility. And if you can, Krzysztof, please also tell us how the Ukraine facility sees the role of local governments in Ukraine recovery. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for invitation to this event. The challenge I have is just 15 minutes to be able to explain about sustainability principles in the Ukraine facility. First, just a reminder, I assume you must have heard about Ukraine facility on a number of occasions. It used to be that European Commission has, European Union used to support Ukraine with many different instruments. Now the proposal is to have a single strong instrument with single governance for short and medium term objectives for the recovery, reconstruction, modernization of Ukraine. As I said, in short and medium term. Short meaning responding to urgent needs for recovery, but also medium term, meaning addressing the needs for modernization and reconstruction to make Ukraine more sustainable as a country, and then closer and closer to the EU, because that's also an objective of the instrument. So it's an instrument, the Ukraine facility, to achieve something much bigger in short and medium term. So the time horizon is for 4 years, 2024-2027. The proposal from the European Commission is 50 billion euros, which is still a proposal. It still needs to be approved by member states. Now, let's go into the principles, the sustainability principles, which can be very different. And they are addressed by the Ukraine facility. And as I said, apart from short-term objectives, which are, resulting from immediate needs, Ukraine is still a country at war. with lots of damages happening. Christina mentioned just some examples. So we need to respond to that, but also for the medium term, we need to, so this instrument of Ukraine facility is meant to implement a plan which is called Ukraine Plan. The Ukraine Plan, something developed by the Ukrainian authorities, but in close dialogue with the European Commission. I think we have made a major improvement, starting from early days of these discussions in dialogue with Ukrainian authorities. And in this Ukraine Plan, there are a number of, let's say, priority areas that on one hand need to, as I said, address the issues of modernizations and reconstruction of Ukraine in medium term, but also help with accession to the EU. And to make this happen, there are a number of conditionalities that have been included into the plan linked to the facility, which we are still sort of finalizing, or let's say fine-tuning right now with Ukrainian authorities. Some milestones to achieve in terms of reforms, because that is important to reach sustainability also in economic terms. So sustainability meaning, of course, environmental sustainability, but also economic sustainability, so that investments are not stranded, then they're not lost, that they can continue, and they are meant to continue for many years. Also social sustainability with all the needs for the reintegration of the society, integration of people who have suffered unspeakable things, and all of them are part of Ukraine and need to play a role in the reconstruction. So this is also some aspect of these principles, sustainability principles, and the last one I would call them resilience, which is a generic thing, not only in terms of issues which the European Commission is already supporting with ongoing emergency support programs, like modernization of bomb shelters, improving fire safety of buildings, and so on, but also in medium term, and sort of looking forward for the municipalities who will play a key role in the whole reconstruction effort, looking at things like improving, let's say, the mix of fuels for district heating, so that it's not going to rely only on single fuel like natural gas, but like in, well, more or less in most of a vast majority of cases in the EU, where district heating is multi-fuel. And this improves resilience as well, because if something happens to gas, it can still run on other sources of fuels. So things like that, they need to be taken into account when planning projects that are to be supported and implemented, programs to be implemented via Ukraine facility. In Ukraine facility, that probably you have heard about it. There are three different pillars. Pillar 1 with grants and loans directly to the state. And Pillar 2, which is called Ukraine Investment Framework, to be implemented by international financing institutions, where grants from the European Union will trigger much bigger funds from these international financing institutions that will be deployed for the reconstruction effort. And there will be also a third pillar, which is more for technical assistance. Now, I mentioned that Ukraine Plan is closely linked to the reforms, because how sustainability principles are to be not just integrated in the Ukraine facility, but how they are going to happen in reality, in projects to be supported by Ukraine facility.
Сталість буде відбуватися і забезпечуватися цим фондом Ukraine Facility. Вона передбачена на кількох рівнях. Перш за все, самі по собі реформи повинні продовжуватися. І хоча ми всі розуміємо, що Україна – це країна в стані війни, і багато з реформ спрямовані на безпеку країни і на безпеку громадян. І багато зусиль на це спрямовано. Тим не менше, як нас іноді це і не дивує, що, тобто нас дивує, ми цьому дивуємо, що Україна продовжує впроваджувати в реформі, і парадоксально багато з тих реформ рухаються, тому що Україна в війні. І далі Україна зробила певний прогрес, певний поступ в напрямку гармонізації з європейським законодавством, і їй треба допомагати. І хоча десь вона робить 2 кроки вперед, крок назад, тим не менше вона має статус кандидата, і це буде продовжуватися. І для неї це буде складніше, ніж для будь-якої країни.
As Ukraine is now. Yet, I am a great believer in Ukraine because of people and because of strength of civil society and because of one very successfully moving on reform, which is the reform of decentralization. So I have a lot of hope in my work in Ukraine. I met lots of local authorities, and this gives me hope. The strength, the smartness, and commitment of people at local level, which will contribute to this transformation effort. And this transformation means, and in the Ukraine facility, we have lots of priority areas related to reforms, with lots of principles to be translated into actual actions. I will just name some of them, like, for example, well, green recovery is the first, obviously, and building back better is most obviously most often repeated also by the president of Ukraine and many politicians inside Ukraine. So making sure that all the reconstruction will be according to very high standards, for example, for energy efficiency in relation to buildings, but also leave no one behind principle that is more on social aspects. This means that some investments will be a little bit more expensive, like renovations of buildings that were mentioned, public buildings, for example, many of which have been damaged, that now will have to have, or should really have, improved access for disabled people, for example. So such elements will cost more, but they are justified. They are fully justified. Do not harm principle. This is another principle, which is all of them actually are mentioned in the EU legislation. That is also something important because, how to ensure that sustainability principles are actually implemented when implementing projects in Ukraine facility. Well, if the reforms are continued and EU legislation is implemented, this will provide some assurance that these principles will be really put in place. So this is one level of one aspect, yes, of this ensuring. The other aspect is more practical, more related to the EU acquis itself. Best I explain on some examples, maybe. So for reconstruction of buildings, many of which have been damaged in Ukraine, both residential, public buildings. Now we are working also with other colleagues from another part of the European Commission, and also a huge network of non-governmental organizations like architects from Europe, from Ukraine, to implement new European Bauhaus initiative in Ukraine. Maybe you heard about it, maybe not, with the three critical principles. So first, of obviously energy efficiency first. And energy efficiency first is another principle included in the EU legislation, by the way. So when thinking about investments, think about energy efficiency first, because that is how energy security of Ukraine can be ensured. Buildings are consuming like 40% of all energy in Ukraine. Now, obviously more because industry is not consuming that more. So even more. So, and at the same time, it's a low-hanging fruit. So energy efficiency first is so natural, but it has to be put in place when designing programs. The other aspect of reconstruction of buildings is inclusivity. So I already mentioned this need to ensure that these buildings will have, for example, better access for disabled people. And the third, maybe not so often mentioned principle is aesthetics. Because as I spoke to many mayors in Ukraine, I realized that it is very important that the environment that will be reconstructed will be attractive for people to return. I think we understand that. And honestly, there is a superstition, by the way, by many politicians, including in the EU, who think that if you want to build nice, it has to cost more. Right? Apparently, I have been told by many architects that if this is planned properly, it will not cost more than quick and dirty. And quick and dirty is going to stay, even if it's meant for a short period, it will stay for many, many years. So this is just one group of principles that we are now working on with Ukrainian authorities to put in practice certain criteria for projects. On district heating, I mentioned already district heating. District heating, another principle, which is stemming from the EU legislation. I mentioned the fact that Ukraine is a country at war means that certain rules that international financing institutions would normally apply inside the EU, like EU taxonomy, it would not be so good to implement it in Ukraine in full, because it would be too difficult. It would be, let's say, make some investments very difficult to happen. But at the same time, of course, we need to make sure that investments move towards what is the direction for the entire European Union. And for district heating, this direction is, as definition in the EU legislation, it's called high efficiency district heating or high efficiency cogeneration. High efficiency district heating. High efficiency district heating, this is just district heating which is using at least 50% of heat from renewable sources of energy, at least or 50% from waste heat from industry, or 75% of heat from cogeneration, or 50% of the combination of the three. That's a very typical way the European legislation defines. So again, so the investments to make them like this right now would be very difficult to make it in Ukraine, but at least they should move into this direction. So investment should be not preventing what I have just said, this objective of high efficiency district heating. So investments should not prevent them from happening in the future. They should actually lead to this target. I just gave some examples. There are many more, of course, on environmental aspects. Probably I will stop now. And with more for questions, it will be easier for answering questions.
Thank you very much, Krzysztof. You were touching upon the fact of EU legislation and environmental regulations that are enforced within the territory of the EU, but now would be kind of challenging to impose on Ukrainian side. But at the same time, Ukraine is paving the way to become a full member of the European Union, and that means also introducing like EU legislation into Ukrainian legislation. My question to you maybe would be whether the European Green Deal is a part of this discussion, whether it, like, to what extent is it a sort of conditionality within the Ukrainian facility, like you know what I mean, like climate neutrality, for example, is it a part of the broad, of the more strategic thinking about the investment in Ukraine? So would you like prioritize within the Ukraine facility climate neutral plans over,
Okay,
as you said,
Mhm.
how did you say, quick and dirty? Yes.
Yes, no. Oh, well, of course, we know the position of the government has been already for quite some time to make things happen fast. It's always a little bit of risk, but at the same time, what I meant by quick and dirty was really solutions which are meant temporary and will not be economically sustainable in the future. So, well, the EU acquis is not something really negotiable, but there are some new elements because I mean, European Union is evolving, is moving actually quite fast. The war in Ukraine, I think, gave a new impetus for this development. That's why now the prices for construction works, for construction materials are crazy in entire Europe, which is affecting also Ukraine, because of such increased demand when people realize that we need to stop using Russian gas. Well, there are some things which are right now happening in the European Union. So now, of course, Ukraine needs to go this direction, but it has to be done obviously in a sort of evolving way. So the developments need to go this direction. But EU acquis, it's by itself, is not really something negotiable. It needs to be put in place. So just to give you an example of how European legislation is ensuring certain quality. One example is a specific requirement for mandatory energy efficiency criteria public procurement. Today in ProZorro in Ukraine, I think still it is the lowest price, the lowest bidders win, which means also sometimes very cheap equipment, which is not energy efficient, for example, and using a lot of energy, meaning which will cost a lot during when running, right? While it should, it's an EU. It's not a choice. It's mandatory criteria that need to be put in place. So these are tools for local authorities, for example, public authorities, including local authorities, to make sure that all these investments that will, I don't know, involve some equipment like covered by EU energy labeling legislation, eco-design legislation, like boilers, like electric motors, pumps, water pumps, electric water pumps, and so on. So all these elements are in the EU already put in motion. There are certain products which, if they have really very low efficiency, they are simply not allowed to be sold on the European market. Now, if we talk about integration of Ukrainian and European market, such products also should not be sold in Ukraine. And it's for a good reason, because some people may think, oh, well, this equipment is no-name equipment, as I called it. It's cheap, but in the end, it's not cheaper. It's more expensive because it's not economically sustainable.
Yeah, in fact, I had another question that I thought to keep till the end of our discussion, but since you started speaking about this tricky situation with the like going for cheaper products when dealing with Ukraine reconstruction. So you probably, of course, you're aware of the fact that the Ukraine reconstruction is also being considered as a huge business opportunity for European companies, and more business fairs or events are happening right now, where EU companies try to build the connections with the Ukrainian, for instance, local authorities or regional authorities that will be, let's say, guiding this recovery process, obviously to develop also business links. And this is what's happening on the one hand. On the other hand, we know that in the EU, it's sort of much easier to ensure that the investment is being done in a proper way, whilst it's going to be much more difficult to ensure that this investment will go to sustainable projects in Ukraine, because it's not yet a part of the EU single market. It's not the EU sovereign land, you call it. So how do you see it within the DGNIR, this tension? How do we make sure that Ukraine recovery will actually be human-centered, responding to citizens, demands, not like the big companies just looking for a quick way of investing and gaining money in, because it's the war,
In the Ukraine facility, the intention also of the Ukrainian authorities is to have a single pipeline of projects. Single pipeline meaning somehow decided at central level. But I always keep saying, and I've been discussing this also with local authorities in Ukraine for quite some time, whatever investments are proposed, first of all, before they even go to any pipeline, they need to make sense at local level. So there is a need for some planning at local level. Some people could say, if we need to do some reconstruction of water supply or district heating, for example, we can have some technical assistance, maybe from some consultants that will be hired by a bank. They will come and they will design something. Well, this used to be in the past, but the intention is indeed to have some better quality now. And to again, for sustainability, it is very important that some administrative capacity is strengthened at local level, and there is some ownership at local level, because consultants will come and they will go, and you will stay. I mean, meaning if I talk to local authorities in Ukraine, they will stay. So it's very important for local authorities really to understand what is that they would need. The homework that they will do will, first of all, make such investments much more attractive for international financing institutions, because they will see that you have done some work, some local authorities have done some homework, and these projects are better designed, not from the investment point of view, but from the point of view of the municipality as a system. What I mean is, for example, district heating needs to be designed for the heat demand that will be different in the future. If you renovate buildings, and it must happen, it just must happen, the demand for heat might drop like 50% very easily. So the district heating needs to be designed already right now, thinking how this demand will be changing. And this has to be done by local authorities, cannot be just left only for external consultants, because they sometimes tend to focus on only one element of the puzzle, while municipalities, local authorities need to see municipality as a whole. So this is just one aspect of it. The other aspect is how to ensure that this is actually happen. I mean, you will have some instruments inside the Ukraine facility to ensure the three things. So predictability, transparency, and accountability of funds, that's how they are spent, and also checking what is actually happening. I think this will be very important for, this is a standard thing actually in the EU, when designing policy measures in the EU, that's, public money, when they are spent, they need to be chased. So some public authorities need to know what is actually happening, what is the outcome of them. So in terms of, I don't know, investments in renovation of buildings, what has happened, what's the impact on energy efficiency, and so on. And finally, we can have procedures, and we can have rules. We will have checks will be done by Ukrainian authorities, checks will be done by the European Commission, and the third will be what we called an audit board. So independent audit board will be also checking investments. So there will be some checks, but procedures are only procedures. What will not replace is what cannot be replaced is the need for local, you call them watchdogs, but I don't know, it's just English expression maybe is not that good. It's the role of civil society. So pushing for the right things, pushing for the right investments, pushing for the right reforms at central level, and also really checking or making sure that public authorities know that they are going to be checked, they are going to be seen. So On systemic level, I could talk really long. Don't want to monopolize the discussion. There are lots of ways that have been working quite well. I have been working myself in Ukraine for many years with the movement of homeowners associations, a fantastic movement where people, many of them actually pensioners, are playing a key role. You called it for local democracy. I call it really for local democracy. This is what has been changing people's mentality in Ukraine, something that many people, when I came first time, told me, no, this is not going to happen, Krzysztof. Now we have such mentality. This is not going to happen. I have seen this happening when people make choices themselves, when such local action is actually supported, when systems of support prioritize, for example, in housing sector, projects done in multi-apartment buildings done by homeowners associations. Actually, what we achieve is not only improvement of energy efficiency and reduction of use of gas, which is very important, and not only lower bills for people so that they have more money, they can afford money for medicaments, for other things which they need. But it's building the democracy, because I have seen it myself, that this is also something that is changing people's mind, and once they have done something themselves without waiting for central authorities to come and help them, this is changing their minds, I think, for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Krzysztof. Thank you for this fantastic answer. Speaking of the civil society and the watchdogs for the green recovery of Ukraine, I would like to pass the floor now to Valeriya Izhyk, who's the EU policy officer for the reconstruction of Ukraine at CEE Bankwatch Network. This is an organization that works to prevent the environmentally and socially harmful impacts on international development finance and promotes also public participation. Valeriya, please tell us, what are your key advocacy messages on Ukraine reconstruction, and how do you advocate for ensuring it's green and sustainable?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be today with you. I'm Ukrainian, based in Brussels, and affiliate myself with the biggest environmental organization in Ukraine.
Найбільшою екологічною організацією в Україні
Channel for us to deliver our messages here in Brussels, where they are most needed now, when Ukraine facility is going through a difficult time. Krzysztof, I think, mentioned it, that unfortunately trialogue hasn't started yet on the file. So it's important to be here and to understand the nitty-gritty details about how the green recovery will be unfolded via Ukraine facility. So I will walk you through three main points today. The first one is to what extent were NGOs involved in Ukraine reconstruction conferences. The second one, what was the NGO's contribution to the Ukraine facility draft regulation? And the third one, what can be the next steps? So with the first one, about the extent to which NGOs were involved in Ukraine Reconstruction Conference. You might remember that the first conference where this topic was raised was Lugano Conference in July 2022. This was the first time when the international community donors started to talk about the reconstruction. We had the first World Bank report on the damage caused by Russian full-scale war, and we started to basically look in the future and think of those principles and underlying logic of reconstruction in Ukraine. Back then, we already had martial law, and it's very important to understand this very important condition under which civil society organizations are working now. So basically, martial law has significantly limited access to which are basically the most effective tools for civil society engagement. I'm talking here about and strategic environmental assessment, CEA. Nevertheless, Ukrainian CSOs, civil society organizations, and international CSOs kept on pushing for disclosure of the plans about the reconstruction. And in parallel with those Lugano principles that were prepared by the international community, civil society organizations came up with their own list. And in this list, we have the following principles. The first one is integration of environmental and climate policy into all sectors. The second one, serve needs of Ukrainians and promote sustainable development. Then environmental standards at all levels. Local self-government, transparency and involvement of the public and communities. Green economy, effective functioning and use of targeted donor funds, and adherence to European environmental planning tools. Since that, more developments took place. European Commission declared that a special Ukrainian facility regulation will be developed, and then we found ourselves in the second conference, which was London conference in June 21-22 in the UK, London. For that conference, it was interesting to see how civil society wasn't in the center and even in the margin of the discussion. It was mostly dedicated to business. Christina mentioned this previously, that what we're seeing now is basically most of the efforts are dedicated to putting in touch the municipalities and business in the European Union to get started some early projects. Since then, we've learned our lesson that civil society organizations should be more proactive in pushing our messages at different platforms where the future of our country is discussed. Again, keeping in our mind that martial law implies lots of restrictions on public consultation and public participation. With this in mind, proactively, Ukrainian civil society organizations, together with European ones, we're approaching the organizers of Berlin Recovery Conference, which will take place next year. And we're particularly emphasizing that this time civil society organizations should play a very important role in messaging what should be prioritized for the reconstruction, and how civil society organizations can help those municipalities that we are talking about today. Because that's true, what Krzysztof mentioned about the consultancies come and go, and how we actually ensure that the knowledge and expertise stays on the ground level, and that projects can actually continue when people who launched them leave. That's why this local civil society organizations is such an issue, because we do have lots of national CSOs, NGOs, but local organizations, they need more support. And we do hope that the third pillar of Ukraine facility regulation will dedicate some special funds to support those local CSOs who can do their job in those small cities, communities, villages, municipalities. And I finish my first point with some intelligence that I gathered at the Ukraine Green Recovery Conference in Vilnius. It was just a week ago. It took 4 days. It was very intensive discussion in Vilnius, and there again we raised the question how we actually translate those green recovery, what we call green recovery, how we unpackage this green recovery. What is behind this beautiful term that we always use, build back better, green recovery, green reconstruction. And I think it's not going to be a surprise for anyone that it's very difficult for now to say, to basically list very specific policies for every sector to reflect this green recovery. It's still work in progress, and the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Energy are working together to actually to be able to say in 2-3 sentences what green recovery means for housing, for energy transition, for strategic infrastructure like water management, or waste management, especially debris management and all those big waste that is produced in the result of Russian attacks. So we're looking into the Berlin Recovery Conference now, and I think we will also communicate it with the European Commission, especially with DG NEAR, how we would like to see better representation of local civil societies at these conferences, and actually shape the conversation of these conferences. My second point is about the contribution of NGOs to the Ukraine Facility Draft Regulation. Krzysztof already mentioned that there are 3 pillars, and it was a very small community of civil society organizations who actually provided their amendments to the draft regulation. I was one among them. What we did is basically we submitted our amendments to the European Parliament when they were working on the joint report on the regulation. It was voted on the 17th of October. And we achieved some good progress in terms of ensuring civil society oversight, as well as environmental and climate conditionality. So one of just a few examples for you to understand what is currently in the European Parliament's amendments. First of all, it's the commitment to spend at least 20% of the plan's total allocations on climate change mitigation and adaptation, environmental protection, green transition, including biodiversity. The second one is included European Code of Conduct on Partnership, which is a very well-defined tool on involvement of different economic, social partners and civil society organizations while spending money from EU funds. We borrowed it from Recovery and Resilience Fund and also Just Transition Fund, something that worked pretty well for Central and Eastern Europe, and we see big potential in including this instrument also in Ukrainian case with Ukraine facility. And finally, just third example for you to understand what we pitched for, we convinced the European Parliament that the Commission shall be empowered to adopt a delegated act to develop a guidance for each of these principles and a methodology for supporting Ukraine in the preparation of the Ukraine plan, which is a stronger language than it was in the initial plan, and which gives us more insight into what's been cooked in this Ukraine plan. We know that there is no final versions for now, but that's a very important overarching plan to understand how the reconstruction will move forward. Something that we also did with other European organizations, we reached out to European member states and the Spanish presidency with European Green 10. European Green 10 is basically 10 biggest environmental organizations in the European Union who are working on ensuring an environmental legislation to be implemented in the European Union. So it's basically those organizations like WWF, Greenpeace, Bankwatch, and others. We reinforce those messages of Ukrainian CSOs, explaining and going into details why those changes that we proposed are so important and how is it possible to actually achieve it even with the level of environmental acquis communautaire that is currently implemented in Ukraine. And my final point, what can be the next steps for all of us? So the trialogue again has been delayed, but the procedure will be resumed next year, as far as we understand. Krzysztof, correct me if I'm wrong. And the main goal of NGOs is to preserve those progressive amendments that ended up in the compromised amendments for the Ukraine facility. So we already know what we want. We already put it in the text. But if the Council will water down the text, it will leave us with nothing that we can use to actually enforce the conditionality, especially environmental and climate conditionality in Ukraine's reconstruction. So if there is one thing I want our European colleagues to pay considerable attention and consider acting upon this discussion that we have today, is to reach out to those ministries who are responsible for trialogue in your country. Sometimes it's a minister of finance, sometimes it's prime minister. It really depends on the country, and actually pick up on our messages that we already try to push to avoid watering down the facility. I will end up here, and I'll be very happy to catch up with those colleagues who will decide to join our advocacy next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valeriya. Indeed, I mean, you said that it's very hard to kind of put down in real terms what does it mean to have a green recovery, green reconstruction, but I think you had a very clear points about the 20% investment. And the inclusion of European Code of Conduct. That's already like a big milestone to start with. On the rights of the organizer, will just jump in and say that as ALDA, we also commented on the Ukraine facility from the perspective of including civil society. So we are joining forces here with many organizations. Also, we consulted our members. So basically, like the main comments were done by our members, and I guess not necessarily just the big reputable green organizations, but also associations of like local authorities with big constituencies like ours, but also Ukrainian Association of Local Authorities is a big, let's say, maybe leverage that we could use here to sort of make sure that the environmental conditionality is enforced. Krzysztof, I think you will have a lot of also homework from this ALDA talk to bring back to the Geneva. Sorry for this pressure, but it's an important topic for all of us. And speaking about the consultants who come and go, I wanted to say that not all the consultants who accompany local authorities actually come and go. We have here Liubov Ropalo with us. Well, she's not a consultant. She's actually a regional advisor at the Ukraine Early Recovery Project. And she already had an experience consulting several hromadas, several local territorial communities in Ukraine. One of them is from Kherson region, where the big dam, water dam, was blown up. Another one is now is in Odessa region, if I'm not mistaken. Liubov will be speaking in Ukrainian, so for those of you who need English translation, I kindly ask you to switch to English channel. Любов, вітаємо вас, дуже дякуємо за те, що ви приєдналися. Будь ласка, розкажіть нам про свій досвід роботи з громадами.
Please describe your experience of cooperation with the Hromada, with communities, what practical challenges. Please compare the level of a very bit later as in what priorities do you see and into our future planning, for example. Thank you for these questions. Good afternoon. Thank you for this invitation to the conference, because I believe this is extremely important. Currently, I'm a regional advisor to the project team, regional recovery of Ukraine. This our work started since December 2022, and we had the first call for the project already. We started to work with 20 communities, and as of the moment, we have finalized our primary stage, the stage of analysis, which was held from January till March 2023. I believe that many of them could be familiar to you. Chernobyevska, Borodyanska. I worked personally with Chernobyevska Hromada. This is in the north of Kherson region. It was 100% occupied in 2020 and then liberated in October 2022. The specific feature of this local community is that it is very close to the contact line, just 70 kilometers from Kryvyi Rih and 40 kilometers from Nikopol. These are the points which are most often shelled by the Russians, including ballistic missiles, etc. On the other hand, another specific feature of this community is that they to produce a lot of agricultural products. Specifically, they used to grow up watermelons, which were very famous and big demand as a cultural product, agricultural product. So during 2-3 months, when the this community was deoccupied, and we found it considerably damaged. 8 villages or small towns out of that community were all under occupation, or they stayed in the zone of heavy combat activities, and actually up to 80–90% of buildings in those communities, they were destroyed. And when the territory was deoccupied, local authorities started to think first not only how to recover the communities, but how to think with the perspective of the future. And they felt that they had to gather a lot of data. So they first had to collect data reflecting the situation of this community after occupation, after deoccupation. So we now try to collect up-to-date data from the local administrations or local military administrations, because in some villages or towns, the local self-governments could stop the existence, and we have only military administrations. Additionally, we review statistics in open registers about those communities, and also we organize meetings, interviews, focus groups with groups of local residents. And when it is possible, we go directly to those communities if security allows. In some cases, when security does not allow us to go there, we try to organize these interviews via internet. And doing that, we tried to involve as many local stakeholders as possible. And also, during such interviews, such meetings, whether offline or online, we try to explain that local authorities should not try to develop the recovery plans independently by themselves without any connection with those residents or former residents of the community who had to flee from the place of residence and become IDPs. Thus, we try to involve IDPs into this process wherever they stay as of this moment. And of course, we try to project for the future, try to make all the objects energy efficient. We look at the water supply systems. We look at the recovery of social infrastructure. That is what Krzysztof actually explained, and which is one of our primarily intentions too. What is the biggest deficit for us? The biggest deficiency, the biggest deficit for us is a lack of positive examples to convince people, to show cases when new technologies, when new efficient technologies, they allow to live better, because majority cases, those who have survived in those terrible conditions, they have the psychology and vision which is sufficient to survive, which is good for survival. But this vision for the future is not sufficient to develop, to strive for something new, something modern. Those people are very cautious and when we come and say, let us rebuild better than it was before, but people say, please build it as it was, because they simply do not have this this vision. What can be better? They remember how it looked like before February, before the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and they cannot imagine what can be better. And when we speak to local self-governments, to local authorities, we try to convince them that they should take very proactive position, that they should not rely that just some funding will come and money will come and that it will somehow happen by itself miraculously. We try to convince them that a local community has to plan at the level of its government. That is, the local government has to do its homework to offer something which you would like to fund with money to develop, to show what you want to develop. And of course, there are all good explanations why people at local level do not have such way of thinking. Sometimes is unable to understand that they have to take proactive position. And we understand that when we request them to provide statistics, data, to understand, this will allow them to understand in which direction they can develop, what they need for this development, and what they lack for such development, what structures could be involved, what resources could be involved. At the same time, at the level of local communities, we try to explain that you need not think about a number of new constructions, new buildings, in which you invest a lot of money just to invest somewhere, but you should think more about quality, about your approach, about future. And we understand that this homework is not going to be easy. And all the experts, all the advisors who work in the project yes, we come and go. We come to local communities and we leave them, but we all the time keep in touch with local authorities when they learn whom to involve, with whom to contact, and we try to build up networks among them, allowing them to contact each other and to learn from each other. And even we try to involve our foreign partners, maybe foreign municipalities. Quite often when local self-government members deal with their everyday problems, this allows us, when we observe this allows us to understand what are the biggest issues for this community and advise something which immediately becomes something that could become a short-term win, very quick win for this company. For example, we established contacts of Barantsovska community with Assen city from the northern Netherlands, and they started to communicate and to share their experience. And the Netherlands started to contact that Novovorontsovka community from April 2022. They started with humanitarian aid deliveries, but now they have established close contacts, and they have found that they look reliable partners, that there are children in that local community which was recently deoccupied. Many residents, former residents, during combat activities, they expressed readiness to come back home, and that's why in summer and autumn this year the foreign partners helped to rebuild bomb shelters, because this community is very close to the contact line, to the front line. And despite this proximity, the life in this local community can continue, and even children can go to school. Since the summer, even a year ago, when there were expectations that Russia was planning to damage Kakhovska hydropower plant, we started to think about prospective environmental consequences. And when that happened in June last year, this created even more difficulties to the local residents.
Я вас, якщо чесно, хотіла перебити 10 хвилин назад, але ви так цікаво розповідали.
Yes, thank you, Liubov. I wanted to interrupt you 10 minutes ago, but you were talking about such interesting things. I would like to open the floor for Q&A session. I know there is one question from representatives of Bucha. I would like to tell the write it in chat or raise your hand and we will give you the floor. Do you hear us? While we are looking at Bucha, I would like to give the floor to Olga Tsitsura from Zelenodolsk community that's our partners in the project on agencies of local democracy. Liubov mentions about importance of partnership with European municipalities, and Zelenodolsk is ready to start such partnership. I wanted to ask you, Olga, if you hear us. Yes, I hear. So please tell us. Tell us about your experience of developing such a plan, briefly, if possible. So if your cooperation with European partners is in process, then talk about that. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. For us, for small communities in Ukraine, it's very useful. Yeah, we understand that today, for Ukrainian communities to pass this stage of reconstruction is impossible without European partners. And Liubov was talking about the Novovorontsovska. They are our neighbors. They are located next to us. So all the challenges of Novovorontsovka are similar to ours. And the main thing, what we started to put down, to record all the damages which took place on our territory. That's a huge thing that we have did. And then we saw some sort of rating. And we were planning what should be restored as a priority, what should be restored later, what shouldn't be restored, but what should be built anew. We have to go along the way of green recovery and build the infrastructure which would be the infrastructure not of today or of yesterday, but the future, but the infrastructure of the future. And to plan renovation is very difficult. Sometimes our citizens are not very active, and sometimes they're too active. And to define the priorities in renovation is very difficult. But without the community, without the wide discussion, we cannot prioritize what should be and how should be restored. The first year of the aggression starting from March and till November 2022, we were all the time shot at. We were under shellings, and without the support of European partners, we wouldn't have an opportunity today to return our people to our community. And thanks to this cooperation, we managed to restore housing. And I would like to say, when we were looking for the opportunity to restore, we were saying that we should be energy efficient, and we were thinking of not just restoring what we had, but we were thinking about how to make it more attractive for people who live there. Today, the challenge is bigger. It's restructuring of the infrastructure, and these are communal institutions. We have some educational establishments which are ruined more or less, but basically all of them were damaged. And the big challenge is in the Lukakostovka village, we don't have an educational institution, we don't have a library at all. They were completely destroyed. And of course, we can restore what we had, but that's in the way it existed, but it isn't what we need. We want to attract some external experts to define what we can do on this territory, to provide all the services to people, to children who are back in the village. And at the same time, so that the whole infrastructure is up to date, efficient, so that it corresponds to the strategy of sustainable development. And that's what we are trying to do, small communities. In practical cases, is what we need. The exchange of experience is very, very important. And we need the support of experts and financial support, because we are facing a huge challenge, and I believe that not any other European country faced it in the 20th century. But I'm sure that together with partners, we'll be able to restore our infrastructure, make more attractive, more and efficient, and for our people. We want them to be back. Thank you, Olga, for sharing your story. We will continue to develop our cooperation with Zelenosdolska. And before we close this session, I will give the floor to Mikhailina. Mikhailina from organization Yabuchanet and from Romania Local Council. Mikhailina, you can speak now. We hear you. Shall I speak which language? Ukrainian, English, whatever.
You see me and hear me. I posted my question in the Q&A chat. So I worked in Bucha City Council as a deputy mayor in Bucha. So we deal with all those problems our colleagues from Kherson explained. So we are like one step forward at the moment. We are really discussing and talking a lot about green recovery, and we work with EcoDia in NGO sector with Yabuchanet. You have project they are implementator, and also as a Bucha City Council, we are Berlin Economy Fund where we are implementing. We are trying to do the research about action plan for the housing green recovery in Bucha city community, not only in Bucha city, but in villages as well. So, but now I represent NGO, and we are trying to do like expertise, and we are trying to do better planning and better implementing. And also we want to create like researching team to not only to rebuild and not only to build back better, but also to fix each step and analyze our successes and failures for the future recovery, to be able to like extend and multiplicate our experience for other communities, because recovery in big cities and small cities, as was mentioned today, different. So we are searching for funding, and we are searching for partners in that work for the next year, and we are ready to discuss. And my request is maybe we have partners. ALDA is our very strong partner in networking, but we need to move forward from networking place and project management team to institution able to analyze what we are doing, what is right, what is wrong. And that's the question, that's the request. Because we had great experience what we did, and we need somehow to analyze, move forward, and to multiplicate best practices from our region.
Okay, thank you very much, Mikhailina. I think from other side, we'll keep working with you on searching for European partners, if that is your request. In case someone from the speakers will like to react and immediately merge the Hromada of Bucha with some EU partner that you have in sleep waiting for helping some Ukrainian Hromada?
Yeah. Let me add, Christina, because we are talking not only about Bucha and Bucha community, but about like Bucha district, which includes 12 communities. 6 of them were under the occupation or under the attack, heavy attack. So that's the most suffered part of Kyiv region, where the biggest amount of victims and the biggest amount of destruction took place in March and February and March 2022.
Yes. Okay. Understood. Note taken of that. I'm not sure the speakers can immediately react to this request, but I think it's important you voiced it. Also, we have here today around 60 participants, out of which there were some EU organizations as well. So maybe if some of them was interested, we could also connect you further. We will anyways contact the participants sending the notes of this ALDA talk and the follow-up. So I would just say stay tuned for that information. I think if we don't have any other questions, unless maybe speakers have questions to them to themselves, to their colleagues, we could probably close up here, because this is our time slot that we allocated for this current ALDA talk. I don't know, Krzysztof, Valeriya, Liubov, if you wanted to react to anyone else's speech or to add something you might have forgotten during your speeches. Yeah, please, Krzysztof.
Yes, thank you. No, very interesting experience has already been gained in many different municipalities. And it is indeed important that this experience moves quickly to other municipalities, especially the smaller, medium-sized ones. They have really big needs. We understand that. I have seen in the chat from Christina, from you, information about EU-LEAD program of helping municipalities with developing local recovery plans. And I think this, I would also like to advertise it. The colleagues from EU-LEAD, that's a big EU-funded project on decentralization. I'm working with them myself, met them recently. I'm very glad that they will continue now with helping other municipalities. But experience from cities, towns, regions, which have already been doing this, like Bucha, I think it would be really useful to use it. I don't know if there is anybody from EU-LEAD project with us today.
Okay, I might have been not very clear at the beginning, but we are organizing this ALDA talk within the framework of a project funded by the EU-LEAD with Europe. So
good.
So yes, and we had a participant, the actual Ruslan, for sure. I think if he wants to take the floor and react to Krzysztof's, in case you want, Ruslan, we granted you the rights of speaker, but yes, there.
Hello everyone, I'm here, but my camera on this device didn't work.
It's fine.
Greetings for all from EU-LEAD with Europe program. We are supporting this project with ALDA, but unfortunately I couldn't comment some things about recovery plans, because my area of responsibility is just an intermunicipal partnership, and we're working with medium-sized municipalities, and we are interested in establishing sustainable cooperation between Ukrainian and European municipalities in different areas of cooperation. It could be also some issue about Ukrainian facility, about reconstruction, recovery, and we always looking for some opportunities how to help Ukrainian society, Ukrainian people, Ukrainian communities. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ruslan. Sorry for putting you on the panel like this without any previous notice. We have just last quick remark from Adrien Lichard, who is the coordinator of our secretariat at ALDA. Adrien, please, very quick, and we will close.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christina, and thank you to the panelists for the wonderful discussion. Just to react on the suggestion also made by Krzysztof, this is a little bit the approach that we had at ALDA, trying to capitalize on the expertise of Ukrainian municipalities to exchange and to foster the similar practices in the different areas. And this is the approach also we will have in Dnipro, for instance, where the colleagues that have already been in place since 2015 will be able to support other communities to develop and to experiment. So this is a little bit how we want to move forward, and I hope with the support of all the stakeholders at the table here, we will be able to implement this approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrien. If we don't have any further remarks, I think 7 minutes late, it's a great time management. So I would like to congratulate everyone on this first ALDA talk. Above all, our speakers, thank you very much for your time, but also for the active participation of the audience. We will be glad to see you all on the second ALDA talk that will take place on the 29th of January at 3 p.m. So we will develop this habit of meeting every month on Monday at 3 p.m. and speak about green recovery for Ukraine. As Valeriya mentioned, it's going to be about ecological demining next time. So stay tuned. We will contact you with further information. I have nothing else to add except for the sincere gratitude to everyone who shared with us this last 98 minutes of time. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do pobaczenia.
Do pobaczenia, Krzysztof.